Hi everyone, Dave Prouse here. Today I'm going to upgrade the video card on this computer. This is the AV editor computer. Currently I have a GT 730 video card in here, and I'm going to upgrade that to an Asus GTX 970. And the reason being, this video card's okay for everyday use and for multi-monitors, but for video editing it lacks a little bit. So I'm going to put in a much more powerful card. I actually bought this about 3 months ago. Got a good deal on it, but there are newer video cards out. I don't need the latest and greatest, so this is good enough, I believe. And so we're going to swap this guy out and install the new video card. So first of all, in the planning stage, you want to make sure that the video card is compatible with your system. And you want to make sure that it meets the specs, and make sure your motherboard meets the specs for the video card. And also make sure it'll fit size-wise. So you want to do all that in the planning stage, which I've already done. And then you want to assemble your stuff and make sure you have everything you need. Well, we've got the computer. We've got the video card in an anti-static bag. We've got documentation for the video card and for the motherboard. And you might need a couple other things. In my case, I need an adapter. I need a 6-pin to 8-pin adapter because this power supply didn't actually come with an 8-pin, and that's what this card has. So you have to check that kind of thing beforehand. And you'll need a trusty Phillips head screwdriver. A number 1 is what I always have on me. And you want to make sure you're employing anti-static methods, employing that ESD prevention. And so, for example, we have the anti-static strap. Keep your stuff in the anti-static bag until you're ready to use it. Anti-static mats. Stay stationary when you're working on the system and when you're handling any components. And, if possible, work in a non-carpeted area. And always want to discharge yourself before you handle any components. And usually the case of the computer is good enough for that. We want to make sure everything is unplugged and that the kill switch on the power supply is off, and then we can get to work. And really, the physical install is not that difficult. We first have to make sure we know which slot we're installing to. And generally, you're using the first slot, the one that's closest to the CPU, and that's slot number 1 in the documentation. And so if we look here in the documentation for the motherboard, we'll see the slots, the layout for the slots. And that's the slot that we have the card installed to right now. And that is a PCI Express version 3 by 16 slot. And there are other options, but that's the one we're going to use. And if we look at the other slots, we'll see that the rest are really used. I might be moving some stuff around. There is 2 other PCI Express by 16 version 3 slots, but one is being used by a PCI Express solid state drive. And that can't really move anywhere else. And then the last slot down here is also PCI Express by 16 version 3, but there's stuff in the way, there's cables in the way and so on, and it doesn't really work out for a video card. So really the card's got to go here, and that's okay. I'm going to try and swap this video card somewhere else on the system just to see what happens just to see if it's possible to actually use that in addition as an extra monitor. But the main thing is we're going to install that new card. Now, if you wanted to install 2 of these cards to work together, if you're doing high-end gaming or really high-end graphics or computer-aided design, then you would need to find that second slot. And really, the last slot doesn't really work out. And there is another by 16 slot, but it's actually version 2, so that wouldn't work. So we would have to really do some thinking. This card might have to be removed, or we'd have to try to force it in here to get that second video card in. And then you would need an SLI connector to connect the 2 video cards together. So you want to plan all that stuff out beforehand. I'm just using the 1 card for now, and so we should be okay. So we're going to do some removal and installation of the new card. So first we'll go ahead and remove the old card. Take out the screw for that guy. Hold on to that because we'll need that. Touch the chassis before we actually remove the card. Okay, once we get that screw out, we're going to want to pull the card straight out with both hands using equal pressure, pulling up. But quite often you'll have a tab underneath the card that you may need to push down on PCI Express slots. So we'll find that tab, and you don't want to touch the motherboard here. So if you need to, use a wooden trim stick or something. But we're going to push that down, and then we should be able to pull the card out. Straight out. Okay, and there's our GT730. Sounds good. We'll put this to the side and in an anti-static bag. Okay, next, this card actually takes up 2 slots. So we have to remove a second slot cover. And that's okay. We're not using that guy. That's a by 1 slot that we're not using. And that's why they usually put a by 1 slot there, because they know that the video cards are big, and chances are it'll cover up that slot. Pull that slot cover out, put that to the side, and I usually put that kind of stuff in the motherboard bag, or the motherboard box that came with the motherboard when I built the system. Hold on to all those parts. So we need those 2 slot covers open. And we'll take the card out of the bag. First, touch the chassis. And we're going to try not to touch any circuitry or the card itself or the, here. Don't want to touch any of that stuff. And we'll put this in position. Okay. And you want to be careful installing this because it's so big. You don't want to scratch the motherboard or touch the motherboard. And so we get this in position, and it takes a little bit because you have the ports sticking out of the slots here. So you kind of have to work it in, be patient with that. If necessary, move other cards if you need to. For example, I might move this one anyway. But once it's in position, then we're going to press straight down till it clicks into place. Okay, and there we go. There's a little bit of space over the south bridge here. And we've got space between it and the CPU and the RAM. It looks good. The only thing I might do is swap this out, but I might be moving some of these cards around anyway to try to get that old card in just to see if it'll work. Next, we put the screws in to hold it into place. And sometimes it can be a little difficult getting the screw in place just because there's some stuff in the way here. So a 3-prong parts grabber can help you with that to actually place it in there. And just put the screw in there and then use that to place that into in position. And screw that guy in, and we'll do the other one. Just a little bit easier this way, because if the screw falls in, it can be difficult to get to. Screw that guy in. All right. Good to go with that. Now we need to supply power to this guy, and we have the 8-pin right here. Now, as I mentioned, this power supply doesn't come with an 8-pin connector. It supplies you with a 6-pin connector, so we need an adapter for that as well. And that's going to be this guy. Put the adapter to the side, and we're going to plug in the red end of this into the power supply where it says PCI Express, and that's usually color-coded red as well. Okay, plug that in until it snaps into place. Then we'll connect our adapter on the 6-pin side. Make sure the tabs line up here. That snaps in place. and then the 8-pin into the video card. And usually the tab is over here on this side. So we're going to go straight down like this. Snap that in. Make sure it's flush. And it looks good. Now, if you can, when you're doing your planning for your system build, you want to try to have a power supply that does 8-pin, especially nowadays. It's just when I built this about a year ago, this particular power supply, it was exactly what I wanted, except for that 8-pin, which I didn't need at the time, but now I do, so the adapter is required, which usually works fine. So we'll tuck this in for now, and I'll do a little bit more cable management later. But now the physical installation is finished. This is the video card we will now use. I might do a little swapping to try to get the old video card in just to see what happens with it. But now we're going to move on to the software side with the driver installation, check it out in the device manager, and do a little benchmarking with it and compare it to the old card. Okay, so I closed up the computer and plugged everything in and booted it up. And after about half a minute, the video showed up on the screens. And so we're looking good. Let's bring up the device manager. And again, this is Windows 10, and it automatically installed the drivers. Let's look at display adapters, and we'll see both video cards here. And so it installed the drivers for the GTX 970 automatically. Now, I may decide to download the latest drivers, and we just search for the card, and here it is, the GTX 970. And we'd go to support, go to drivers and tools, select the OS, Windows 10 64-bit, and so on. Download the latest driver from there. Now, something I didn't show is the ports on this guy. And let's go to the gallery. And here you see the ports on the side, or on the back, if you want to put it that way. And we have two DVI ports, and those are the two that I'm using with this card. I have two 24-inch Dell monitors connected to these DVI ports in a multi-monitor setup. And I'm only screencasting off of one of those right now. But it also has an HDMI port and a display port if you want to use those. I'm going to test that and see how that goes. So here's what I want to do. I'm in the device manager here, and I'm showing both video cards. I want to use both. And here's why. First of all, I'm going to use the GTX 970, and that's going to go out to 3 monitors. In fact, it is going out to 3 monitors right now. 2 of them are DVI connections, and those are going out to 24-inch Dell monitors, and that's where I do a lot of my work. The third one is going to a display port connection, and that's going to an Asus 24-inch. Now, the Dell monitors run at resolution 1920 by 1200, but the Asus runs at 1920 by 1080p. And so that's the 1080p monitor that I'm going to use when I'm editing. If I'm editing video, that'll be my viewing window, and it'll also be what I record and what I record from as far as screencasts go. And, the beauty of this is it's in a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, whereas these, that's a different aspect ratio altogether. These are great for working. These are great for video, for watching what you're editing, and for watching video and recording video, and of course also gaming. And so I had to go out and get myself a Asus monitor for that, so I can run the tri-panel system. And it's actually, I've already set it up. It's working very well. And all 3 monitors connected to that guy simultaneous works great. But the GT730, I still have that in here, and I'm going to use that too. That's going out via HDMI to a splitter, and the splitter is going out to a secondary HDMI monitor, and also to a video capture box, which then goes out to another system, and that computer will record that system. And really the reason I'm doing that is so I can record the UFI, meaning the BIOS, from that system. To do that, I have to disconnect all the video connections from this guy and connect this guy. And basically what I'll do until I need that, I'll probably disable this guy, the 730, in the device manager and disconnect the cable so that there isn't any type of conflict or confusion, and normally just use these. And there's a couple reasons for that, but generally if you're in the UFI or the BIOS, you can't record from the system that you're at because you're not in the operating system. So I have to split it and run a video capture to another system. That's another whole thing that you probably won't be involved with, but who knows? And that's my solution for that guy. That's going out to another computer. That's actually a Media PC, which acts as my Pro Tools rig for audio. And so that can also run Camtasia and other programs to capture the screen and capture what I do in the BIOS step by step in real time. So both video cards in there, there's no problem. I've tested with heat. I've tested thermally and also within the UFI and within Windows, and everything looks good. The card and also the power adapter that I had to use, everything looks good there. So that's basically what I want to do with this whole rig, and it's working pretty well so far. And if we minimize this guy and go to our display settings, bring up that window, you can see the 3 monitors that I'm using right now. This is the Dell 24-inch running at, I'll go to advanced here to show it. This is the Dell 24-inch running at 1920 by 1200. This is the other Dell 1920 by 1200. And you can see this in the photo that I'm showing as well right now. And in the middle, we've got that Asus monitor right now running at 720p, just so I can screencast it and show everything a little bit bigger. But normally I'll run it at 1080p. And that's the setup. And if you don't see one of these monitors, for example, if you connect an HDMI or something else and it doesn't show up right away, well, you want to check and make sure it doesn't say disconnect this display. If the monitor is showing as a dark gray, not this gray color, but darker, then it's probably disconnected. It's probably set to this, and you just have to click it to select it, and then select extend desktop to this display, and then you'll be able to see that guy. So the whole video system looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and benchmark it. Really, I'm going to benchmark the whole system, and I'm using Performance Test 9.0 here. I have a couple other programs, but we'll run this. And we'll select Run Benchmark. And it says you're about to run all tests. This will take several minutes. So I'm going to pause the video while we run this and click Yes. And it's going to start up all the tests. And once it's all done, we'll take a look at the results. And the reason I'm doing this before I install the driver is because I'd like to compare the two. The Windows 10 driver compared to the latest driver from Asus. I usually recommend getting the latest driver from the manufacturer, but you never know. So it's always good just to take a look. So I'm going to pause the video right now until it finishes, and I'll be back in a moment. All right, so the performance test software completed. This is by Passmark, by the way, and it's one of the benchmarking software utilities that I use. And we see here we're at the 96th percentile for the entire computer, so pretty good. And again, that's only for what Passmark has benchmarks for that have been submitted. I never submit stuff like this. I'm just one of those guys. But anyways, what I'm more interested in is the video. And we see here the 2-dimensional graphics. The 2D is at the 87th percentile, and the 3D is at the 97th percentile. Now, with the old card that we're still running, that old card was somewhere around the 17th percentile. So big difference here. And you can see the CPU, 97th percentile. That's a Core i7. And the memories at the 89th percentile. I've got 16 gig of DDR4 RAM. Now, I haven't tweaked this computer at all. And I was actually running a lot of apps while I was doing the test, but I believe the test bypasses those and takes top priority on the system. and actually delays those. And in fact, it delays the hardware as well when it tests the video. So that shouldn't really have made a difference, but I haven't really tweaked the system at all within the UEFI, within the BIOS, or within the system. So we could possibly get these numbers a little higher. I'm going to save this performance test, and as I mentioned, I'm going to download the latest driver and then run the test again under the same conditions and see if there's really much of a difference. I'm interested to know. So when I get a chance, I'll do that. But everything is running really nice now, and I'm happy with this 97th percentile for 3D. That's going to really help for video editing. The 2D number here as well. That's really going to help for video editing, and in the case I ever play any of these high-end games that I have downloaded that I never have time to play. But mainly for the video editing, we should be in much better shape, especially when layering multiple pieces of video, whether it's screencast or actual footage. It's the actual footage that really slows down the system. You know, something that was taken from a camera or a phone, from a camcorder or whatever. And when I'm layering multiple pieces of that video as separate tracks, that's where it really slows down in Adobe Premiere Pro and within Camtasia. So that's about it for this video. The card's installed and it's all good, and should have a good time with it. Looks like a decent card so far. Again, it's not the latest card out there. There are the newer versions, and but this card, you know, I got it a couple months ago for $200 on sale. You could buy the latest card for $500, $550, but are you really going to get that much more performance out of it? Judging by these numbers, there's not that many people out there that are faster than what I'm offering here, at least as far as the Passmark software goes. So as far as what they've collected, their data. And, you know, what really helps with that is it's a pretty good motherboard and a Core i7 CPU and plus good RAM. So that is something to keep in mind. You know, I developed this whole system to be an AV editor, an audio video editor. And now with this video card, it's pretty much complete. It's ready to do what it has to do at full power. And that is edit and render video in a timely fashion and without any hiccups. As far as the disk mark here, this is 94th percentile, but that is for the Samsung solid state drive that I have in there. It didn't test the Intel PCI Express solid state drive. That's where I put all my media files, video files, music files, audio, whatever. And that's where I leave them while I'm doing editing until I'm finished and have rendered final videos. And so, you know, that's actually a faster drive, and I test that separately, but this is still a pretty good result for the disk for that Samsung. So I might do some more performance tests for this system and other systems and do some comparisons. So that's it for the video card install. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me at my website, www.davidlprouse.com.